Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the next live interview for FTEN X Academy. We're live streaming this across Facebook and YouTube. I'm here today with Jason Graystone. Jason Graystone is an entrepreneur, investor, speaker, and co-founder of Tier 1 Trading. He's built and co-built multi-million-pound businesses, both online and offline, and he's on a mission to help people live a more free and inspired life. Many of the others we've interviewed have actually said that Jason is their mentor. And Jason, your ears must have been burning because people have been bringing up your name a lot in the last couple of months.
Really? Wow. That's great to hear. I must be doing something right, eh?
You're doing something right. How are you, mate?
I'm really well, thanks. Can't really get myself into too much trouble being locked inside my house, but I'm grateful for being healthy and fit and loving life.
Awesome stuff. So it'd be quite good to get a bit of a background on who Jason Graystone is.
Okay, so Jason Graystone, as you say, I'm a professional investor and also a professional trader, actually, in the financial markets. And all that kind of stemmed from a mission that I set out on as a youngster to try and get this financial freedom, which was kind of the buzzword, and I think still is for many people. But I actually set out with an engineer mind that I've got to achieve, a structured and tangible process of doing that. And essentially, it all stemmed from where I grew up. So I grew up on a council estate in South London, a little place called Hatfield Mead in Morden in Surrey, if anyone's from that neck of the woods. And you'll know it was a big, massive council estate on London Road. And I lived there from 4 years old right up to 18. And when I was about 13, 14, we used to be surrounded by all these people on the estate, and they used to moan constantly about money. We used to all congregate around the steps on a Friday night and moan about money and how evil it was and how only rich people were greedy and evil and all this kind of stuff. And then this guy called Roy would come round and he'd take the syndicate lottery round and go and do the lottery tickets. And then for the next half hour, they'd all spend this time going, "Oh, what would you do if you won?" And their eyes were lighting up and they'd spent it in like 2 minutes flat of how great their life would be. And I just remember thinking, like, there's something not right. I didn't know what it was. I didn't profess to be kind of above them or understand why it was wrong. I just thought there's something not right there. There's some kind of conflict. And it was later that year that I did a little car wash, and I managed to basically wash a car. I agreed with my dad that I was going to raise half the money towards a BMX that I wanted. And then I went and washed some cars. And I quickly realized that if I got some friends to wash some cars and take the money and then invest that into buckets and sponges and squeegees, and I could actually get 4 friends washing cars, and then I'd get the money without having to do anything. And it was kind of this. I was 14. It was my 14th birthday. I got this Mongoose Menace, chrome Mongoose Menace with trick nuts. Went and picked it up. And I remember riding it back thinking, this is why people hate money. They're just not using it right. Like, there's got to be a different way to use it so that you can be more free and leverage your time. And that's essentially how it started. My journey into kind of this quest for financial freedom started. And since then, I've been able to, launch businesses and invest and buy stocks and trade the currency markets. It's been a rocky journey.
Wow, yeah, incredible. And again, looking at your reason for doing what you're doing, a lot of the times I kind of bring this up in these interviews is that I kind of see a pattern, right? A lot of people who come on here, they've got an incredibly strong why. They know exactly why they're doing what they're doing. They're driven by something, and like you said, the way you look back, you could kind of join up those dots, right?
Yeah, one was the void of, so with the position we was in, it was me and my mum till I was 6, and then I met my stepdad and he moved in. But up until that, I remember a big void in security, not just from financial. Well, financial was a big part of it, but part of it was a father figure as well. And the financial security in particular, I remember like bailiffs knocking at the door, and we had no electricity and things like that. I remember sat in the corridor when it was dark and feeling a little bit scared and all that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking, like, I literally never ever want that. I don't want that. And there was this lady called Denise that lived on our estate. And one day I remember her saying to me, you don't sound like your mum and dad. You don't speak like your mum and dad. And it was because I'd made a conscious effort to start speaking differently and speaking with a different tone. And I was almost trying to remove myself from that kind of that spiral. And I remember saying to her, that's because I don't want to be like my mum and dad. And I didn't mean it like horribly. I just meant that I don't want to be in that situation. And then the second step to that was when we found out that we was going to have our first son, and I did not want a son. I did not want a child. Like I made no, I was very honest about it. I was like, look, I'm not ready. I was 22, 23 when we had him. And I was like, this is crazy. This is the worst thing that could happen to me. I genuinely thought that at the time. And I got my head around it. And that's when I got the real rocket. I was like, right, I need a plan. I need a plan. There's no way that he's having what I had, and I'm gonna put this plan in place. And I was methodically mapped out, essentially 20 years into the future, and then the mission and the quest then was to reduce it down as much as I could. So it's like, right, I've got a 20-year plan. How can I reduce it down to 10? How can I reduce it down to 5? And I was just continuously obsessing over this kind of strategy of reducing my my run to financial freedom.
Amazing. I love that additional drive as well from having a child, right? I mean, I said, we had Alexander Siri on here, and I was speaking to him afterwards and saying to him, he was like, oh, you got a child, you got another kid coming this week. I was like, yeah, we're expecting number 2 on the way this week. And I was like, but I've never worked this hard in my life, right? You can work 20 hours a day. You don't need to sleep because
so true.
That physical representation of your legacy is just about to come out, right?
Yeah, right. It's so true. And the more you can, you start thinking about their future and, everything. Like one of the big things for me is everyone. So financial, I'm massive on financial freedom and wealth and living an inspired life, really. And what the biggest trap I see people falling into is they come out of school not really knowing what they want to do. And then they kind of jump straight into a keep up with the Joneses. So my friends have got a Gucci bag. My friends have got a flipping car. My friends, and what they do is they then get a job to fund that instead of thinking, what do I actually really love doing? Yeah. Okay. And let me just focus on what I'm naturally guided towards, and I'll naturally excel. I'll naturally earn more money than anyone because I'm doing what I love doing every day. So one of my big things has been able to support not just the kids as they grow up, but giving them the time that they need to figure out exactly what that is and supporting them along that way. And then, then they'll be paying me, eh? They'll be earning more money than me, and they can pay me for my life.
There you go.
No, but it's really about living inspired. It's really about living.
All your kids' liabilities are assets, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's brilliant. I love the story as well. It's such a powerful story, and it's fueled into what the success you've kind of built. Firstly for yourself, and now the way that you're kind of teaching that into other people. And I know from a previous podcast we did together, it seemed like you didn't enjoy education, and then you became an educator. You sort of led into it, right?
Yeah, very interesting. So there was a couple of things at school. One, I was quite, big at school. I was quite, chubby, and I was. Another thing, I wasn't very clever. So when I say clever, I'm not talking about smart. I'm talking about intelligent. So academic, I guess. And I felt that I lacked intelligence, and I felt that stupid in class. And I also felt, conscious of my weight and everything. So as soon as I left school, it's really funny because when we stood down for the GCSEs, I decided I never wanted to do PE at school. I never wanted to do games or anything like that. And then as soon as we left school, I decided to run 3 miles every single day. And then I bought weights, and I wanted to do all this. And then I got to a level where that almost came a little bit obsessive, but it was almost overshooting a void that I thought was there. And then the next thing was teaching. So one thing I love is being able to stand around someone, share some information with them, and see a spark in their eye, a little spark go off, and a bit of a moment of inspiration in them, where I think, hopefully they go and do something with that. And I can see that that may just shift the way that they look at something. And I'm a massive believer in learning from, the greats, learning from the people above me, and then sharing with everyone who doesn't know what I know. So whatever I learn, I teach, I share.
You've got I know you and I know your system quite well, so it'd be great to share that. You've got an amazing system, and you're very, very disciplined with your approach to kind of handling investment, but also personal investment, right? In self-development and that whole aspect.
Yeah, probably pretty much like you. I've had there's similar patterns in a lot of people that I talk to, but it's really about structure and routine for me. And once you've got a structure and routine, and you've got the habits mapped out, then it's really just a case of making it easy and making it difficult to fail. So whatever I take on, I make sure firstly it's structured consistently, and then secondly I make it easy. So, how can I make this really, really easy? How can I take out everything that's difficult about this particular task? Sometimes that's delegation. Sometimes it's like if you're losing weight, it's like buying packet salad so you don't have to cut food and make food. Sometimes it's like just if you've got to drink loads of water, buying water bottles so that you can just make sure that you drink the water. And it's just things like that. So even with trading and speculation and the markets, it's like I don't want to be trying to trade micro time frames which are very noisy. I'm going to start learning the less noisy time frames, the higher time frame stuff, and I always kind of liken it to playing a guitar. There might be the whole of Metallica's album is played on 4 chords, right? But if you picked the guitar up and tried to play the Metallica song, you'd probably, for the first time ever, you'd sound awful, right? But if you just learnt the G on a slow song and a C and a D, and then you built the muscle memory, then later on you can just apply that and you can play it faster. And it's just a natural progression. You don't have to. So I'll always take things slow, make sure that I'm building the habit and consistency first, and then I don't, I just measure where I'm at, and I consistently try to get better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've only recently started learning to trade, and one of the things that's really blown my mind is the level of discipline a successful trader has to have, right? Yeah. And they've got to follow systems. This is probably why you're really good at it, because you're an engineer, right? So this is natural to you to follow systems, and you're designing those systems. You stick to it no matter what, whether it's a positive or negative outcome. You consistently have the same approach because you've got a winning formula, right?
Yeah, I work with a lot of traders as well, and what we find is there's a very strong pattern between the ones that do well and the ones that don't. And a lot of the people that do really well are engineers, military, or IT. And when you think about those 3 things, it's all logic and discipline and being able to take orders, not being cocky, not thinking you're right, being humble, and just a logic process. So if this, then that, and thought syntax. And also it's about ones and zeros. And when you focus on a process like that, it's like, well, how can I make it better? Because there's no lies, there's no subjectivity, it's all objective. So things that you can measure. And once you can measure things, it's not emotional anymore. It's a process, and it's something that you can map out. And even like when I go running, on my running app, I've got like what worked and what didn't work, and I'll map that out every time so that at least I can see something and say, well, that didn't work. Why would I do that again? And I can continuously improve. And it's there in writing. It's not like my emotions or my hormones or anything like that deciding what I do. It's my plan telling me what I do, not me. Right. So I put the work into creating a plan, and then the plan tells me what I have to do. It's not the other way around. It's not like, oh, I think I'm going to buy Bitcoin today, because I'm feeling a bit cocky. It doesn't really go down well in the market, in your wallet.
That's really, really interesting. Do you think that mentality and process can be applied to business as well as trading?
Oh, absolutely. I just see trading as a business anyway. So trading, trading to me is just like a business. The markets are my employees. The trade plan is my policy. And I handle the money the same way. So it's like a profit and loss, and I'm focusing on profit over time. That's it. I'm not focusing on profit per trade or anything like that. And I say with this, with anything, if you can have a longer term vision and be okay with playing the long game, you're going to be balanced, you're going to be poised, you're going to keep calm, and you're not going to lose your shirt when things go wrong in the interim, because you know that over time it's likely, you're going to come out with a positive expectancy. So with trading, I do that, and in business, I do that. I weigh up the risk reward. I weigh up exactly the same as I would in a trade, except it's much longer term.
I love that, and that brings us quite well into what I'd like to go into, especially when you're talking about maintaining that kind of poised outlook on life, and even when things are going well, when they're not going well, and just having that consistent, calm approach. You've got a system in place for this, and it's called the Tiers of Freedom. If anyone hasn't looked into that, Jason's in the middle of writing a book, which should be published in a couple of months. Isn't that right, Jason?
About 3 months.
3 months. I've been encouraging him to write this for a long time. But yeah, so Jason, tell us a bit about the Tiers of Freedom, and take us through the levels. So that's right.
Yeah, sure. So almost like following the script of this podcast, like we had a script, but it's like when you want to build wealth or succeed in anything, the first thing that you've got to have is a strong objective, because if you don't have a cause beyond yourself, if you don't have a reason to do something, as you said, a why, you're going to get stuck on those day-to-day, setbacks, people's opinions and fear and all that kind of stuff. But if you have a long-term objective, and you know what you're going after and what you want your life to look like in 20 years, 10 years, then things every day don't matter. It really doesn't matter, because when you hit those things, it's like, well, how do I get you ask different questions. It's not like, well, oh, why is this happening to me? It's like, well, this has happened. How can I still get to my goal? How can I get around this? How can I overcome this? Because this is just happening on the way to that thing. So the first thing so what I did is essentially put together a program based on what I did from 22 years old to 29 years old. And essentially what I did between 22 and 29 is I formed an objective, and then I reached a level of financial independence where I didn't have to work. I had passive income streams and semi-passive income streams paying my living expenses. And that was it. At that point, I considered myself to be completely 100% financially independent, stage one. So there's 2 stages to that. So what I was finding is I was hanging around with a lot of entrepreneurs. I've always spent an allocation of my income on self-development, and I was spending, as my income grew, my circle of influence and the quality of my circle of influence was growing and growing in terms of mentors and things like that. And I was just surrounded by people who were earning 300, 400, 500, £1 million a year. And they would come to me and say, and at that time, there was people earning much more than me, and they were like, oh, what are you doing? I want to know what you're doing. And I was thinking, you've got some great businesses. Like, what have I got that you want? And I was having lunch with one of my mentors, and they said they want the time. They want the time to be able to just take a step back from what they're doing in that busy job or that business and breathe, and then consider what their next step is. And I thought, right, so what I'm going to do is map out what I did from 22 to 29, because the thing is, there's lots and lots of different kind of partial wealth strategies out there. There's the property guy, and there's the flipping Forex guy, and there's the stock guy, and there's the crypto guy, and there's the the drop shipping guy, and the Amazon, right? And and what I essentially did from 22 to 29 was a series of investing in a very structured format, from low risk to high risk. And then I would build one account, then I would move on to a second account and structure that from low risk to high risk. And I'd do the same and the same and the same. And I essentially built this pyramid of robust, kind of sustainable income, which couldn't crumble. You couldn't break it, because even if the highest risk at the top fell over, well, it'd just fall over onto the next tier. So I mapped out this program, and it all started with the objective. So the objective of having a long-term vision. And I thought, well, how can I help people figure out what that is? So we built some kind of really cool tools and processes to help people dig into their psyche and figure that out. Once they figure that out, it's a case of then getting the mindset right, dispelling any myths and things like that that are going to potentially hold them back, and then structuring their personal finances in a way where you remove emotion. So, the more that they found that people who had to renew their insurance year on year, about 86% of them didn't renew with the same company. Whereas the direct debits, it was like an 86% difference. So 86% of people just kept the direct debit going. And those insurance companies that initially set those direct debit up when they first came out, they were retaining 86% more customers than the ones that weren't. And that's because of emotion. When you have to make a decision around something financial, your emotions are left on the, it's up to you to do something. And when it requires money or a decision around money, you lose consistency, right? So it's really about building a foundational, automated system around your personal finances that will then just be set up, ready to go to build wealth as quickly as possible for whatever income that you pump in the top. So then the question comes to, how do you pump as much income in the top? You build a buffer of cash so that you've eased your animal brain, and then you start looking at passive investments, stocks, then you look at business growth, then you look at speculation. And the Tears of Freedom program is designed to teach you those systems, but with one thing in mind, and that is liquid assets, growing liquid assets all the time and keeping liquidity, leveraging your time, leveraged income systems, not working 6 a.m. till 10 at night, climbing a corporate ladder, not developing kind of non-efficient systems in business. It's all about kind of high profit, high efficiency, timeless, spaceless, digital delivery, those kind of systems. And then how you can start putting in money into this funnel, and then how you can take a portion of that and put it into speculation to accelerate returns, and then give people a tool and a gauge so that they can see, based on their own information, to what day they will become financially independent. So they've got something to go for. And that's the Tears of Freedom.
Brilliant. Wow. There's and I mean, you could make a course on each aspect of that, couldn't you?
I guess so. Yeah. Each part of it could be modules. Yeah. Or a course. Yeah.
Are you able to, I don't know if you can do this, but do you have an iPad with you where you might be able to share a screen and show us how the buckets work? Because I think for a lot of business owners, that's like fairly new information. And seeing a structure like that could be super powerful and really insightful.
Yeah, I could see if I can I even share a screen on this? Yeah.
Yeah, you should be able to, yeah.
Yeah, I'll try and share a screen. So I said, yeah, that is a great way to kind of draw it out. It kind of, a lot of light bulb moments go off when you see it this way. But then again, a lot of light bulb moments go off when you think of wealth in terms of time instead of money. So like, how much time can you buy based on the amount of money you've got? That's just asking that simple question can be like, oh my God, like if I sold my house and cashed the equity and invested it, or even if I sold my house, like how much of my living expenses would that pay me forward for? And how much time could I have off, and what could I create in that time instead of going to that job that I hate, right?
Yeah, right.
And I've explained it to like taxi drivers on the way home, and you see them, they're like, oh my God, these 60-year-old guys. And they're like, I've literally never even stood back and thought about that. Like never. And I go, so you go to work. Like there was one guy, he was like, oh, I'm going to keep working in the taxi and working. Then I'm going to get to my goal. And I said, oh, cool. What's the goal? And he said, to buy a big house like yours. And I went, oh, cool. And I said, what are you going to do then? And he went, and you could almost see like he hadn't thought. And I was like, what? So you're just going to keep going back to the cars then? And while your house sits empty, you're going out taxi driving all day. Yeah, right. And it was like, wow. Yeah. So it's crazy. Let's see if I can do.
Guys, if you've never seen Jason go through this before, it's really, really cool. This is a really practical insight into how you can distribute income as it comes into your business, but also into your personal life as well, so that you can build a buffer, so that you do have an aspect or an allocation towards self-development. And essentially it guides you into how you can become financially free. It's a really, really cool system. Yeah, if you can you see how to share screen on that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to let me share my iPad. No, probably not, mate, actually. What we could do is just put the link to the video that I did on it with the illustration. Yeah, we'll put that in the.
There's a really good illustration here, guys, that we can actually share with you, which takes you through the whole thing. Unless you can do it on just a pen and paper or something, can you?
It's just a bit tricky with the old webcam, isn't it? I haven't got a whiteboard behind me like you, mate.
You've not got a GoPro you can stick on the head, mate.
Oh, we'll put the link in. We'll put the link in. But essentially, look, let me explain it. So if you imagine we've got a bucket up the top, which is essentially the first bucket that everyone's got, and that's kind of like your bank account where all of your income comes in. And most people have got one of these. And if you imagine the bucket up here has got a leak in it. And what's leaking out is your lifestyle expenses. Okay. So every month the money fills in the bucket and the money pours out of the bucket, and you don't really know where it's going, or for most people don't really understand where it's all going. They haven't got tabs on it. So the first step, if you imagine, is to put a plaster on that leak. Okay. Stop the bleeding, I call it. And when you're in the army and you're out on the field, the first thing you're told to do is stop the bleeding, because if you drag the person off the field, they'll be dead by the time they get there. First thing is to stop the bleeding, then get them off the field. If you stop the bleeding and control that lifestyle cost and understand what's going out, then you can kind of put a little tap on that to control. Now, of course, when the income comes in the top bucket now, the bucket starts to fill up more. And when we reach a certain threshold, which I call the 3 to 6 months living expenses, we can open a second tap on this side that then filters into a investment account. And what we do is we fill the investment account a little way, and then we start pumping money into passive investments, okay, that will produce a return of 7 to 10% per year until the point, right? And that's the very basic structure of it without going into all the other buckets, and you'll see that in the illustration. But essentially what we're looking to do, if you imagine this investment bucket, that is compounding and compounding and compounding until the point when you can turn a tap on in this one, and that will kind of hose out into the top bucket and pay your income. And then the primary income that came in before from your job, you don't need anymore. So a very kind of simple glance, that's kind of what we're working towards here. But there's many, many more buckets, and it's very, very simple. You'll see in the video there. But that's essentially how I see it. I want to live off of the passive returns that don't require my time, and I don't want to live off the active and immobile returns that most people live from. Yeah,
definitely. When you watch this animation, guys, which I'll post after the live, you're just, some light bulb moments will just go off. And the coolest thing about this is when you actually do it, when you actually do what the animation says, then the real life animation, the real life light bulb moments go off, because it is completely life changing for your business and for you as well. So it's helped me massively through this crisis. So yeah, a massive thanks to you, Jason, for your insights and help with that. I'd love to go into your theory on business and business of the future. I'd love to go into timeless and spaceless businesses.
Cool. So I've always been a massive, so you probably know by now that everything's about leverage of time. So for me, anything that can reduce your requirement to be physical in a place, using products and services that are decaying. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about that. So when you look at the balance sheet of a business, when you look at a stock, or you look at a company, or you look at a set of accounts from a business, you'll see a property, plant and equipment allocation. And the value of the business, the price to equity ratio and the price to book ratio and the calculation of when a business is doing well is very much based on how profitable a business can be without using property, plant and equipment. In other words, without using things that decay, without using things that when you buy them, they're rotting. Like this microphone, it's going to rust, right? The brick is going to decay. The desk is going to break. The roof tiles are going to snap. The patio is going to break, right? The fence is going to crumble. So as soon as something's installed, it's decaying. And the minds that built that thing are on to the next version, the iPhone 5, the iPhone 10, the iPhone 11. And as soon as it's released and it's in your hand, this is breaking and cracking and getting fingerprints on it. And the camera's starting to play up. And do you know what I mean, right? So I've always been a fan of thinking of businesses that reduce that need to have physical property, plant and equipment, but also that are timeless and spaceless. So first of all, wear and tear. Second of all, timeless, spaceless. And what I mean by that is the easiest thing I can think of is the Blockbuster and Netflix, right? When Blockbuster was doing the same service in terms of product, it was a film at the end of the day, but you had to get in a car, you had to get some petrol for the car, you had to drive to the shop, you had to park, you had to pay for parking, get out of the thing, walk around the shop for an hour, choosing a film, get a load of popcorn, get back, right? All that. And then go back the next day to take it back and get fines and all that kind of stuff. That meant that you had to travel very far, and it meant that you had to, spend more money. It was like £5 a film or £6 a film or something. When Netflix came along, all they didn't make a better film and they didn't provide more films. What they did is just reduce time and space. So for me, evolution is a move towards less time, less space. Things are becoming less complex, and things are becoming more ordered. Okay, so any business that works on those principles will do well. It's the same with Amazon. They sell everything, so you don't have to travel to every shop. So that reduces space, and then they literally just work on how quickly they can get it to you. Like that, they're obsessed over that. The one click. They're obsessed with drones and getting things instantly to you, same day. So that all they're doing when he says we are customer obsessed, what he means is we're obsessed with reducing space and time with our clients. That's it. And that is all they do. It's not the product. The products you can get anywhere. It's reducing that time and space. So for me, I've always been about leverage of time. So any business or system that I create, I want it to work. I see my life like Tetris, where I'll create something that's a bit clunky that will fall in, and then I try and match it and fit it and compact it in to save as much time as possible so I could drop in another block, right? And I want to do that over and over and over again. And the way to do that is to think about online businesses and digital delivered services and things that can be delivered 24 hours a day, things that don't require opening hours. So I'm very much an advocate of online business, evolving business, space and time, but I am a massive believer that you have to provide, maximum value. You have to literally provide value to the point where people want to tell others about your product or service. So that's a big focus. That's the only focus. So in terms of quality and value, I want other people to tell other people about this. And then in terms of delivery, fast, quick, don't have to travel anywhere. That's it. And when you match those two, you don't need marketing, you don't need sales. It's just, it's like it's like a flywheel.
Amazing. Yeah. It's such a brilliant philosophy, that, and I think if you can kind of gear your business towards timeless, spaceless in the next year, but in the next 10 years, I think you're going to see a lot of success. What would your advice be to small business owners who are in this group? They've been adversely affected by the lockdown, by everything that's going on globally. And you're coming at it with this new approach of timeless, spaceless, building a buffer, all this different stuff. What would be your kind of steps, if you like, that they should take in order to secure what they've got and set them up for a great decade ahead?
Right. So the first thing I would say is get your finances in order. Like, make sure that if you got stung this time, set up the system, set up the foundation. Don't wait. I get so many people saying, I'll wait till I've got some money and some income before I start saving, or before I set up that structure, or before I start investing. Do not wait, right? Set the thing up. Imagine you're just setting it up like, just ready to take. Think about this, right? Think about you're out in a desert and you're literally about.
It's quite easy for a lot of us, by the way. Let me try and picture that.
Think about you're stranded in the desert, right? And you've got all you've got around you is like some old containers and some buckets and all this kind of crap, and you're really, really thirsty, and you're just praying for rain every day because you're just about to die of thirst, right? And then all of a sudden it rains. It all rains, right? All the clouds open and it's pouring down in the desert, and you're just stood there with your mouth up to the sky, right? And what you didn't do was get all the buckets that have been hanging around and have them ready to catch all the rain, right? So what you end up doing is drinking for about half hour instead of filling a load of buckets that will then provide for you for potentially months and months into the future.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So think about it like that. Don't think I can't do it until I do this. Think about that's the priority. Set that up. Then when it comes in, I know I'm good to go. So that's the first step.
A comment here from Shivani. What if all savings are depleted and you're starting from scratch? Well, I guess it's the principles of developing that structure, regardless of your current situation, right?
Absolutely. Like, even if you've got no money now, start from scratch. Set up automated banking accounts, right? So savings. And you don't have to automate them until you've got income coming in, but set up the segregated account. So set up a savings account, allocate 10% into that, set up a buffer account, set 10% into that until you've got a 3 to 6 months living expenses. Set up a self-development account, which is something I do, 10% into there, which means that you're going to have an intangible income growth, because if you say, right, I've got 10% of the income that comes in, I've got to spend this on a Audible membership or a book or a webinar or a course, and you spend it, you will have more ideas to then go and put on paper to then go to the next step, which is create a product, right? So the first thing, if you've got no money and you've been depleted out, is go and serve people. Like, that is the easiest thing to do. There's nothing stopping you from going to help people, going to serve people, creating an amazing product that will go and give value to someone. And then the next thing is people say, well, I've got no value to give. Well, that's not true for a start, because there's always someone that's kind of underneath you in terms of there's always something that you've got that someone wants to know how to do. Okay. And second of all, if it is really, really true, then just go and skill up, right? Go and read, just go and read something, go and learn, put your money into going to learn something that's in an area that you enjoy. Not a drop shipping, not a flipping, not all that, not something that's going to try and get rich quick in the short term, something that's aligned with what you actually like doing. And then go and build an amazing product. Go and ask people how you can serve them. Don't spend a penny. This is how I've launched every single business without spending any money, is ask people what they want. Ask people what they want. This is exactly what I just spoke about when I designed Hanging Around Entrepreneurs. I was like, oh, right, they want that. Okay, what else do you want? What else do you want? And then you start pitching it. It's like, well, I've got this thing coming out soon, and it does this, this, and this. And you see their faces and like, oh, tell me when that comes out. That sounds amazing. And you're like, what else would you like in it if it was to come out? And they're like, oh, it'd be good if it had this. I was like,
if I was gonna make this thing.
say my friend was going to make this thing, and but it's true, right? You don't have to spend any money.
I think a lot of people guess, right? They come up with this idea and they romanticize about this idea and how amazing this idea would be, but they don't actually test it by having conversations with people or getting feedback from the market before they launch it, right? So there's no testing phase. There's just idea, and
the reason there's no testing phase is because the most important step has been skipped, and that is build a buffer of cash. That is it. Build a buffer of cash. There's a return on investment just from having 3 months expenses in the bank.
Yeah, tell us about that. Okay, so let's imagine. So this is something which a lot of people can't get their head around, which I find really interesting as well. Imagine you've got £20,000, and you're like, right, cool, which is going to give me 5% a year, right? So you could get 5% a year of 20 grand, but instead you stick it into cash. And Jason, tell us, a little bit about the return of investment on just holding it as cash.
Yeah. So if you just manage to save, I get this all the time. Oh, I don't really want 20 grand just sitting in the bank. I don't really want 15 grand sitting in the bank. It feels like a lot of money. It feels like I'm wasting lost returns, right? Let me tell you that if you put that money into the market, it's lost anyway in terms of your animal brain. It's in a world that you don't understand necessarily, and there's no way that you are going to allow it to sit there and produce the returns. And even if it does, it's gone. Your liquidity's gone, right? You've got no liquidity, which means you've got to still go and scramble around and scratch around and try and figure out how you're going to bring more income in. Let's just say that you've got 15 grand in the bank, right? I'm going to give you two examples. Let's pretend that I'm a builder. And I'm a builder. I've done some work on your house, okay? So I've come around as a contractor and I've fitted out your kitchen, and I haven't got any cash buffer. And towards the end, you say, I've snagged some of your work and I'd like you to come and take a look at it, right? I have no money in the bank, and immediately my back is up and I'm coming round to you aggressive. I'm like, well, what do you mean? What's wrong? Like, I need the money. Pay me the money, or I'm going to take you to court. Like, I need the money, right? I see this all the time. And what do you think is going to happen? They're probably going to pay you less than you would have got. You're never going to work for them again. They're never going to recommend you. And you're going to churn through customers doing that. If you just had that cash in the bank, this is how you'd approach it. I'm going to snag some of your work. Fine. No problem at all. Let me come round. Let me make sure that this is all good for you. In the back of your head, you're going, I can live for 3 months, even if I don't have any income. So you're like, I want to make sure that this is a good deal for both of us. I want to continue doing work for you in the future. I want you to recommend me. I'm going to make sure that I come around and everything's sorted. You go around, you sort it out. They're very happy. They recommend you to all their friends. You work for all of their friends. You become oversubscribed to their friends. You can charge more. You don't have to look for work ever. And that return, that's one example. But the way that you speak to people, the way that you speak to your family, your partners, your wife, your husband, your colleagues, your staff, your boss, right? You're going to work with that cash going, I don't need the paycheck. What I'm doing is I'm thinking, how can I make this business better? And the creativity that gets activated from your brain from having that cash buffer will provide you with a big return. So that's my advice on that.
It's interesting because it's almost intangible, right? You can't put a finger on it, but you've highlighted all those things which are mostly psychological. The return, it's a lot of it is down to your mood and the way you approach different things and the way you essentially kind of approach your life, and it's incredible.
It just comes down to survival, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so while you might put that money into property or something and you get that fixed return, ultimately you won't have all of those benefits that you've listed, right? And
also, if the money's in the market, you just don't know what's going on. Like lots of people that put their money in the market, they're jeopardizing their survival instinct of breaking that system, because they don't understand where the money's going or what it's doing. And when people don't see the stock market as people out there serving people, right? Producing things that we can do this technology on, and going out there and asking themselves, how can we serve the world today? They don't see it as that. They see it as ones and zeros on a statement. And by seeing that, it's like, well, I'm just looking for numbers to go up and down every day. They're not thinking in terms of there's human beings behind these companies, right? So they're uninitiated. And by putting everything they've got into the markets, they're not looking at it like that, and they don't understand it. So they'll just end up taking a loss, or as soon as it dips, they'll pull their money out. They'll be back to square one.
Yeah, definitely. I think unless you're highly educated within a certain type of market, whether that's property trading, whatever it is, stocks, shares, you're going to be subject to your own emotions, right? Totally. One of the questions here from Sabrina, which might help add a bit of clarity, is what's the animal brain?
Right. So the animal brain, when I refer to that, is the oldest evolutional part of the brain called the amygdala. And I've studied this for many years because I've studied lots of psychology and trading. And what the amygdala does, it just tries to keep us alive. So in very basic terms, it's a survival mechanism, and all it wants is us to be safe. So if you go back to when we were living in caves, okay, what we do is if there was a apple tree and we needed to eat, and there was a lion, and then there was a cave behind us, we would run to the cave to avoid the lion before we go to the apple tree to eat. All right. And the reason for that is because from an evolutional standpoint, we're more fearful than we are greedy. And this plays out. If you don't believe this, right, I encourage you to go and look at a chart of the last 50, 60 years of the stock market, okay, and look at every crash and every recovery period. And what you're going to see is a saying in trading and investing: the bears jump out the window and the bulls take the stairs. And you see that exact principle play out in the markets time and time again, where you'll see the market crash, which we've just done, and then you see the recovery period take a long, long time. It's like on average over the last 90 years, on the last 9 recessions, the average is about 3 or 4 years. So what you don't see is a perfect V. What you see is kind of a tick shape, where we crash and then we climb, and it takes a while for us to get, a bit more courage and a bit more elated and kind of the confidence to start spending again. That's why we have stimulus and things like that. But that's what you see. That is human evolution and human psychology printed in the markets. That market participant reaction is there for you to see, witness time and time and time again. So if human behavior hasn't really changed much in like 3,000 years, human psychology. So if we're more fearful than we are greedy, what we want to do is work on easing that fear, stopping us from, telling it that it's going to be okay. And the longer you can say it's going to be okay for, the more confident, the more opportunities you're going to have. So for instance, when the market's crashing, I'm looking to buy more, whereas everyone else is looking to sell. And when the market's, but in the same instance, when the market's overinflated, I'm looking to be wary of how much I'm putting in, because I know there's likely to be a crash. And I'm looking at the 50-year mean growth of the market and how far above and below we are from that mean. So again, animal brain.
That kind of long-term view over the whole thing just dilutes that animal brain approach, right?
Absolutely. I hope that made sense. It was kind of a long.
No, it makes sense to me. Hopefully that answered the question. Sabrina says, thanks for answering, Jason. So I think that one was awesome. Let's have a look. We've got some really good questions here, guys. So I'm just going to skim by. You probably can see on the right-hand side, Jason, all these questions buzzing in. So this is a great question from Sabrina again, stealing the show. What's been the best self-development return of an investment you've made? Great question.
Best self-development return on an investment. Self-development. Okay. I guess the best self-development return was having this is kind of a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's having a commitment to having a self-development allocation. So literally deciding to put 10% of your income into self-development, which grows and grows with your income, which again, it's intangible, but having that in place and sticking to it and giving yourself permission to literally, spend that money on self-development is probably one of the best things you can do, because that will scale with your income. And the more income you get, the bigger the allocation is, and you just keep spending it and keep spending it. In terms of,
courses, books, education.
Yeah. Sort of stuff. I mean, look, the best thing is probably the most obvious is like an Audible membership, right? You just keep going through books. It's like $6 a month, and you can learn from. I see books as like a snapshot of a great mind that's just been frozen into 5 hours. And you can literally download their entire life in 5 hours into your head. So
that's cool.
The more you want to do, the more you do that, the better.
Are you one of the? I mean, I know you love to be timeless and spaceless. Are you one of those guys who speeds out the audiobooks by 3? Actually,
I've got a video on YouTube on how to read about 90 hours of books a year without changing your life at all. Can I share that little tip?
Yeah, go for it. Let's hear it.
So the best thing you can do is go and get an Audible membership. It's going to cost you $6 a month or whatever it is. And then go onto Amazon and get one of those little Bluetooth speakers that you can stick on the wall in the bathroom. And every time you go to the toilet, you probably spend 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes in the toilet or having a shower or a bath. literally just connect your phone to it and listen to that book. And if you do that over the period of a year, it racks up to something like 90 hours of reading. That's without going to 1.25 speed, which I always do. And that's without any other commuting. So if you get in your car, it connects to the radio. If you go for a walk, connect to your earphones. If you go on, and you can literally churn through books without even sitting there and reading or taking any time out to do anything different than you would in your life.
Amazing. So I mean, you could easily get through a book a week doing that sort of process, guys.
And it's just from having a shower. Like, you're going to have a shower anyway.
Yeah. I mean, this is it, isn't it? But then at what point do you kind of get that balance of creating and consuming, right? Where do you find that balance? Yeah,
so it all comes back down to structure, I guess. Like I've got 12 calendars, and each calendar, it represents a different area of life or habit. And I get told, like a business plan, like a trade plan, I get told when I've got to do each of those things. So, now's reading time, now's gym time, now's family time, now's date night, now's, and although it sounds regimented and structured, and there are blocks in between all of that stuff where you can just be spontaneous and random, but by setting that structure up, it makes sure that you stick to it.
Yeah, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen, right?
Planning, your walking can be. A lot of people have lists for big things they want to do, but I have lists for when I'm non-productive. So if I'm going for a walk, I'll look at a non-productive task list that I can do while I'm on a walk. So that could be listening to an audiobook. It could just be go for have a think, have a plan, look at the trees and kind of get ideas and just dedicate that walk to thinking. And it really, really helps. Like, if you focus on thinking and planning, you'll think and plan. If you focus on, the downturn in the market, you'll find debts knocking at your door and all that kind of crap. That's what seems to be what I find. Yeah,
definitely. The thing that kind of strikes me about you is a lot of people go through life and they have a rough idea of what they want to do, but and life tends to happen to them, right? It tends to happen to them. They react, they deal with things as they go through. But you've got such a structured approach, to the way that you run your day. I mean, 12 calendars. Who's got 12 calendars watching this now, right? Everything is very, very structured. And again, it goes back to that kind of engineer roots, I reckon.
Yeah.
So really, really interesting. But at the end of the day, it gets shit done, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean?
It gets shit done, and it moves you up the the leadership triangle. It's you don't see. So if you think of, like, I kind of like, there's a example my mentor uses where he talks about, if you imagine how far people can see into the future, how far people plan. And for most people, like you say, it's like, what are you doing tonight? And they're like, I don't know, I might watch Walking Dead or something. And then you say, oh, what are you doing at the weekend? And they go, I might go for a beer, to celebrate crap week at work and just get away. And then you say, well, what are you doing next week, next month? And they're like, oh. What are you doing next year? I don't know. No idea. And things just happen. They have a kid and it's a surprise.
Yeah.
They do this and it's a surprise, and things just get thrown their way, and they're kind of having to dodge or handle it as it comes at them. Whereas if you imagine the how far you can see into the future, a bit like what I said at the beginning, and plan into the future, will give you a structured way and keep you balanced and poised and see everything that happens day to day as on the way, right? So the example is this. If you imagine factory workers, okay, who are doing a task that takes 3 minutes, right? And they're going, right, this takes 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes. And they're doing the same job over and over again. They're normally thinking day to day, right? Then there's a manager above them, like the factory manager, who can deal with complexities in those factory workers. And they're thinking week to week. They're thinking week to week. And then there's like an upper manager who's thinking month to month. He's thinking about the reports and managing the managers. And then there's the CEOs thinking year to year. And then the visionaries like Elon Musk and Richard Branson, they're thinking about interstellar. They're thinking about hundreds of years into the future. And they're not worried about comments on Twitter. They're not worried about, like, people bitching about them or anything, because they've
Yeah.
got that big vision. So they know what their life should look like year on year on year. Now, on the flip side of that, I do believe that, if you knew what your life was going to look like every single day, you would have a pretty boring life. You might as well shoot yourself, right? Because everimagine if you knew what dinner you was going to have and what your kids were going to look like and what was going to be like the day, right? I think uncertainty is a great thing, and embracing uncertainty and enjoying the challenge of getting to those goals is what makes you alive. So that's really rounds off my whole message of going after something you want to go after, because you will embrace it and you'll enjoy it, and you'll be excited about the downsides, and you'll be tackling them, and you'll be laughing about them along the way. There'll be points along your life that you'll feel that are the worst moments, but a year later you'll be laughing about them. Whereas if you're following someone else's journey and you're climbing some ladder that's behind someone else and you've got someone else's agenda, you're not going to do that. You're probably not going to do that. And you'll get to the end and you'll go, I wish I did all the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah, completely. I think that's spot on. Hopefully you guys got a lot from that. Amazing insights there. I'd love to hear, to kind of close our interview off. I'd love to hear what you feel is the biggest mistake, apart from the sort of finances, the biggest mistake small business owners are making right now, and one tip that they could do to kind of rectify that.
Okay. The biggest mistake that I see a lot of businessmen, I'm not going to say all businessmen, I'm going to say a mistake that I see happening a lot is people focusing on, creating business cards and creating a website and spending a lot of money on a business without having. So to simplify this answer, I guess, giving people what they think they need instead of what the actual people want. So I see business owners creating amazing programs, right? And they'll spend hundreds of pounds on business cards and thousands of pounds on brochures, and they'll put together this amazing program of what people really do need. Their audience really do need it, right? But the problem is the audience don't know they need it. They all they're thinking about is what they want, and it's a very noisy world. So look, if you're a fitness instructor and I want to lose fat, okay, and you're telling me you got to change your mind, you got to change your whole lifestyle, you got to change your habits and your routine, you got to get up early, I'm going to go, no way, mate. I want a six-pack. Right? Now, I might need all those things, but telling me I need those instead of going, I'm going to help you get a six-pack, right, is going to turn me away. Give me a six-pack. Once I'm in, then tell me what I need to get the six-pack, right?
Yeah, really.
Marketing something that people don't know that they even need, instead of giving them what they want and then giving them what they need, is a massive problem with a lot of businesses that I see at the moment.
Amazing. Brilliant insight. Completely agree with you there. As someone who's an expert in the markets, a lot of people watching this will be worried, quite right, justified, about the future. They'll be worried about, how long this is going to go on for, what to expect over the next year or 2 years or 3 years. Is there any way you can shed some light and positivity for our audience?
Worried about the future. Okay, so look, this is going to happen. We're going to have a recession on average once every decade. So from the market's perspective, what you want to be doing is thinking much longer term, thinking in terms of humans are always going to want to travel. Okay, so look, although the airlines have gone to put, they're going to be back. There's always going to be a demand from human beings of some kind. Therefore, there's always going to be a service to provide. The next thing you need to think about is your spending is someone's income, and everyone's spending is someone's income. So this really comes down to service always wins. If you can think in terms of serving, you'll always do well. If you're out there trying to grab a buck and take for you, you're not going to get any money. You're not going to get any income. You might for a little while, but it won't be sustainable. So thinking about the long term and thinking about setting yourself up for a sustainable decade ahead is think in terms of service, think in terms of your lifestyle costs, and then calculate what your lifestyle costs are and how much money you would need to bring in to cover those lifestyle costs, and then work on these two things. First of all, make it as mobile as possible. So whatever job or functional role you might have, or whatever product that you've got, try and make it as mobile as possible, okay? And then once it's mobile, make it as passive as possible. Lots of people have got this thing about passive income. If you're chasing passive income, you'll never get there. If you do it in this step and you make it mobile first, then passive, you'll get there. And the difference between the two is mobile is space and passivity is time. The first thing you can do is make it mobile so you can do it from anywhere. And then the second thing is reduce it, delegate everything that you don't want to do, like anything that you feel like you should be doing, must do, or, ought to be doing. Write down all your list of things that you do and try and start delegating those three things and focus on the things that you want to do, love to do, and you really, really feel a burning desire to get up and do. And if you can do that and set a plan to do that over the next 10 years, you're going to come out in a phenomenal position in 10 years' time.
Amazing. Brilliant advice, mate. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming on. What's the best way for our guys to get in touch with you or listen or read more about what you do?
You can go and find me on all the social medias. So, Twitter, Jason Graystone, Facebook, Jason Graystone. And you can find me on Instagram, J_Graystone. But what I would recommend to everyone is if you just check out my podcast, because that is, you'll understand a lot more about me, why I did certain things, and really the entire strategy of my life.
Awesome. 234 5-star reviews I saw.
Yeah. About 200.
And one 0 review from one hater.
But yeah, it went to number 1 in 3 categories, which I was quite pleased with, and it's had amazing feedback. 240 reviews. It's called Always Free, and you'll find it on all the platforms.
Guys, Always Free podcast. Check it out. Awesome podcast. Jason, thank you so much for coming on, mate. Really, really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Take care.